Bill Szymczyk's biggest surprise when he first heard the James Gang with Joe Walsh. We talk about the smoker you drink, the player you get on this, Rocky Mountain Way. So much more about Joe Walsh, his solo stuff as well. It's Eagles producer Bill Szymczyk on Rock History Music. With Joe Walsh, you've called him your guitar mentor. Working with him, what was that like in those early days when you were working on the James Gang and then with his solo album?
Right. When I first saw the James Gang, let me back up a little bit. After I'd done BB for the ABC, I was a staff producer, and I was up until that point, I had only done people that were already on the roster, and it was I'm assigned to do this. This group needs an album. This guy needs a single, whatever. So do that. And then after BB, maybe you know what you're doing. I said, well, can I sign somebody now? And they went, okay. So through a friend of mine who was an ex-roommate who moved to Cleveland, and he said, man, come out here. There's a bunch of good stuff going on. So I did, and found the James Gang and found Michael Stanley in another band. So there you go.
With Joe, who was it? Chris Thompson, Blinded by the Light. Chris Thompson told me like 2 weeks ago, he says, by far, Joe Walsh is the funniest guy. He still, I had to have a party and he'd steal my toilet paper. And years later, people would say, hey, this is Chris Thompson. Remember him? He said, oh, yeah, Joel would say, yeah, I stole this toilet paper 15 years ago. Like he's just wired unlike people that I know.
Oh, I know. He is. He's a unique dude.
What was your first impression of Joe when you started working with him with the James Gang? Did you know him at all before working with him?
No, I did not. No, I was introduced to the band all at the same time. And, when I walked into the gym or whatever it was like a hullabaloo, in Ohio. And I could hear the band they were already on. And I thought it was like a 5-piece band. Because it was like, well, that's just a massive amount of sound coming out of there. And I come around the corner to look, and it's just 3 people, and Joe's just wailing, and it was like, boy, that guy's good. We better, what's going on here? So that was my first impression of him. I was very impressed initially.
Rocky Mountain Way. Do you have any memories of that?
Joe did the track. That was one of the first time it was like, well, we know what we're doing. We're going to go produce ourselves now. So he took the band down to Criteria when I was still living in Denver. And they did a couple, 3 tracks, and Rocky Mountain Way being one of them. But all of what, there was no words or anything like that. It was just a blues shuffle track. And they come back after a while. Joe says, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And he calls me back and come finish the record. So basically we redid everything on the track except the drums and I think the piano, and just started over again, and we did all the guitars and everything. And by then he had the words, and it was, we were doing it at Caribou, and it just fit. Rocky Mountain Way, there it is.
And all 3 of them get writing credits on that too.
Yeah,
which is cool,
because it was like just a blues shuffle when it started, and it was the 3 of them, and that was it.
Did Joe Walsh ever come up to you at one point in the making of this album and says, by the way, I'm going to call this album The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get? Did he have the album title at the time?
Here's where that came from. I was doing, I was still tap producing in LA for ABC, and I'm co-producing a jazz record with Howard Roberts, a guitar player named Howard Roberts, with my buddy Ed Michel, he was the head of the Jazz Impulse label he was the jazz guy and I was the rock and roll freak. We had offices way in the back so the pot smoke wouldn't get up front. So anyway, we're doing a fairly radical record with Howard Roberts called Antelope Freeway, and I wanted to introduce Howard and Joe introduced Howard Roberts to the Echoplex. And that Howard had never seen one before, and it was a repeat thing for a guitar player. He's a jazz guy. He's plugged that into what, and he did, and he started playing one. And he said, "Oh, this is amazing." So they played around with it for a little bit, and Joe's getting ready to leave, and he goes, "Howard, just remember, the smoker you drink, the player you get," and he walks out. And so years later, or a couple of years later, it was like, well, wait a minute, let's use that, and so thusly that became the title of the second solo record.
But seriously, folks, which was right in my lane. I remember one day listening to I programmed New Age for a little while. I used to program, what is it, Inner Tube and Theme for Boat Weirdos. Those two
Right.
songs that are together, right?
Right.
I used to program those songs as one song. Of course, I named them both on a New Age station. And at that point, I went back to the album and go, wait a minute, like outside of Life's Been Good, which is a real rocker, which is a building song, which is great. There's a lot of really cool, mellow, melodic things on this album.
Oh yeah, for sure. He had a batch of good songs, and about half of them were not necessarily ballads, but they were, light, if you will. I don't mean light in a bad way. It just wasn't balls to the wall.
But he was good in that lane as well. I think some people forget that. He was really good in that. He was really strong in that lane on that album.
Yeah, right.
Oh, where's the full recording of the James Gang at Carnegie Hall? This is from Jack Chapman.
The full recording? I have no idea. Okay. We were supposed to do 2 nights at Carnegie Hall. The truck pulls up. I did sound check in the afternoon. Joe and I go to dinner. We're going back to Carnegie Hall. We're coming back on 58th Street, which is the back entrance to it, where the truck was parked. And Chris Stone, who owned the record plant, is pulling his hair out, freaking out. Somebody cut the cables. And so we obviously did not record the first night, and they were busy soldering all night long to fix the cables, and then hire about 1 cop every 10 feet to guard it. And then everything we did was on one night. So we only recorded one night. And everything is pretty much on the album. I mean, there might be some outtakes, but that's it.
We're going to have a lot more from Bill Szymczyk coming up tomorrow. Every day for the next about a week and a half, we'll have a different clip from Bill. If you're a Patreon member, you'll have access to all the clips early. There'll be links in the description where you can join our Patreon. If you want to support the channel in other ways, there are links there as well. You can make a PayPal donation. But really, like our videos, share our videos, comment on them, subscribe to the channel, spread the word for us. We'd appreciate that. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music.